Hello, good evening. Amos Tarfa here, just going over cells briefly. In chapter 3 of our textbook, Discovering Design with Biology, the focus is on cells. Whatever textbook you're using, you can open to that appropriate section. And basically, we're talking about parts of cells, types of cells. I want to just give you some study strategies as you read chapter 3. In your notebooks or in your workbook, make sure you take notes of some very important pieces. The first one is the cell theory, right? The book gives you three things. Cells are the basic unit of life. All organisms are comprised of one or more cells, and cells only arise from other cells. That's the basic, the cell theory. That's where we start. Your book provides some insight into people or a timeline of discoveries with cells, so pay attention to that as well. Anytime you're giving a name or a context to what you're learning, it's always important to pause and write down the name and the timeline of when that person did what they did. So that's where we begin with cells. So the reason why I'm making this video is partly because we're blessed with this opportunity to use a poster to discuss cells briefly. And if you can get one of these, I would encourage you to get one, especially if you're thinking of doing something in anatomy or medicine or basically if you're going in the STEM area and more with medical side of things, then having one of these will be nice to have, right? So I would encourage you to probably take down that picture of that soccer player in your room and put up a picture of the cells. That's what I think. And the periodic table. Those are two good things to put in your room. And so when we look at cells, we have the animal cell and we have the plant cell. Right away, we see a big difference between the two of them with the cell wall. So it's important to know the difference between the plant cell and animal cell. So plant cells have a cell wall, okay? So that's important to know. It provides the cell with structural support. And so as you look at the different parts of a cell, it's good to begin to label what are the functions of each of these things. This is a diagram similar to the one in your book though. And so you should try to make sure you understand what the different parts of the cell are and what their functions are, right? So you talk about the nucleus, you talk about the mitochondria, you talk about the Golgi apparatus, the endoplasmic reticulum. So it's very good to just learn all of them. The lysosome, right? Lysosome is sort of like the garbage man of the cell, right? So it's good to find ways to recognize the function of each part of the cell. So that's what this chart is showing over here. Your book has it. We'll be discussing this more as well. So what are the parts of the cell and what are their functions? How do you prepare for the quiz on chapter 3? Number one, I would encourage you to, if you want, take all the notes you need, put it in your notebooks, and then later when it's time to study, take those parts of the cell, put them on flashcards. On one side, write the name, and then on the other side, write the function, and then play some games with your friends and ask them, lysosome, then they tell you the answer. And then when it's your turn, you get a stack of cards with the parts of a cell and function, and then have them quiz you. That's one way to review for parts of the cell. Now, this type of study that you're doing with cells will happen with other things you do, like in anatomy and physiology, where you learn about something else that has parts, and then you have to learn the functions of each of the parts. So start working on your study skills to learn, find ways to remember information with parts of a cell or parts of the heart, whatever you're learning as you go further. So chapter 3, you'll learn about eukaryotic cells and prokaryotic cells. You'll learn about plasma membrane, cell membranes, and then you also learn about the flagellum, which is a pretty cool thing to study. We'll be looking at microscopes or using the microscopes to see cells. We have certain slides, and you can do that right in class. We have microscopes provided to you. So pay attention to each part of the cell. Try and even come up with a story that explains the function of the cell if you want. That would be one good idea. Okay, a couple of things here before we land the plane. So for study skills, using flashcards or note cards is a good way to learn about different parts of the cell and their function. Group study is a good way to study for tests like this. Ask one another questions, review. That's going to be important. Draw the animal cell, especially. Make sure you're able to draw a sketch of it and then put in some of the organelles and label the parts of the cell. These will be very important in your chapter 3 test. Okay, the cell is amazing. It shows there's design. Back in the day, people thought that the cell was a simple cell, right? And then more complex cells came from simple cells. But that's actually not the case. The more we study cells, the more we realize how complex they are. And therefore, one who says that the universe came together by chance or that there's no designer or creator of the universe would have to answer why our cells are so complex. In Romans chapter 1 in the Bible, it actually says that essentially God has given us, he has shown us part of his attributes through his creation. He has shown us something about him. And so, when you look around the world, we see the evidence of the handiwork of God. You were created, you were made for a purpose, and you need to remember that. No matter what kind of day or what kind of season you're having, remember that God made you and he made you for a purpose. And your life matters. You were created. The Bible says that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. So, I'll leave you with one more book suggestion that I'm going through myself. This is called Signature in the Cell by Stephen Meyer, Dr. Stephen Meyer. You get a great insight into DNA, and you get some history also. So I highly encourage everybody to learn the history and philosophy of science. And so that's part of what you'll see in this book. Dr. Stephen Meyer has a PhD in the history and philosophy of science from Cambridge University. So enjoy chapter 3, read through it, take note of the terms, don't be overwhelmed, don't worry, do your best. We're going to have opportunities to review what we learn in the chapter. We're going to have a study guide that we can use to study for chapter 3 test, and have good study times with your friends as well, and chapter 3 will go well. Remember that as we go through the book, there are certain things that will become easier, and so chapter 3 and chapter 4, they're a little technical in terms of cells and cell cycle, but things will calm down as you get into maybe chapter 5, 6, 7, especially when you get into chapter 7, and pretty much from chapter 7 till the end of the book, you're learning about different types of classification of animals, of bacteria, and this, that, and the other. So you'll be fine. Just hang tight, keep working hard, give your best. There will come a time to rest, but right now is the time to give your best in studying hard and working with your team. Take care and have a blessed day.